Hey guys, Skybird, and today I wanted to talk a couple of things actually about the channel mostly, and wanted to focus specifically on sort of an idea going into the new year. It's 2024 apparently, and it hasn't dawned on me yet, but we'll get there eventually. Sometime in March or April, I'll realize it's 2024 and things will be good. But wanted to chat for a handful of minutes because lately I've been doing usually between 2 to 3 videos per day, which has been comfortable for me. But I'm thinking of kind of structuring things a little bit more for my own purposes, because as I mentioned in the previous video, I want to kind of talk a little bit about some of the other things I'm interested in as well, not just like Bionicle stuff, because I don't want to turn something I'm super passionate about into a job or something, whether or not I enjoy it. At some point that joy will burn out, right? I think we all know that. We've all been there. And so because I'm passionate about what I do, I want to keep that. So my thoughts are that when I'm producing videos, I think every day, at least while I'm working on the Barra Magna project, I'm going to try to put out 1 video per day at least on the Barra Magna project. It could be 2, right? And then the other Bionicle video, if you want to call it that, will be focused on something that's more topical, that, I've covered other things in certain videos, like the fragility of sockets and things like that, right? And so talking more along those things, right? Or doing reviews of sets and so on. The third video, though, what I'm thinking right now, and let me know if this kind of works for you. Sometimes it's going to be Bionicle related too, just because there's not going to be anything else on my mind, of course, but sometimes I'd like for it to be something a little bit different, talking about other things I'm passionate about, right? That could be things like plants, as I've mentioned before. It could be featuring music or something that I've wrote, or working in Blender on a Bionicle related thing, right? But it could also be playing like games and stuff too. I do not consider myself the best in terms of commentary on games, which is why you don't usually see those types of videos on here, but I'm getting better at it, and so it is difficult for me. But I bring all this up because there's a comment I actually wanted to kind of respond to in this video. Hopefully you're okay with that commentary. But yeah, and so, it was just interesting in general because there's a lot that captures my attention, but it can be hard for me to put it into words in that moment, right? I was just outside a handful of minutes ago. It's very cold out, although I'm a cold-blooded person. I guess I like it out there. And it's cloudy, it's getting towards the evening here, so the sun's setting, and it's just like, for some reason, I was overtaken by this melancholic feeling of like the past, right? It's New Year's, so that's probably relatable, but also thinking about like the places I've been. I'm not going to get into any sort of like crazy stories in this video, but while I was sitting out there thinking about this stuff, I come up upon a lot that inspires me, and I also come up upon a lot that reminds me of memories of the past or whatever, or just feelings, right? And so covering topics that I remember, or that were a big part of my childhood, my growing up, whatever. I feel like there's something interesting that I can lend to those topics through my perspective, perception, whatever. You know what I'm trying to say. And so yeah, it's just interesting stuff. But I've thought of doing, like, I've mentioned this in a previous video, too, because it was a hilarious idea, at least to me. But doing like even communicative science education type videos as well, because I have an interest in that kind of stuff. Talking about like principles of physics or geometry or mechanisms, things like that. Actually, that could be a lot of fun in general too. But again, that's something I kind of have to learn my way around, right? How to present that kind of information for you. And while I was sitting here thinking of all this stuff, though, a joke that I thought of, which I'm sure I've mentioned in a previous video, though, was that with each video just putting on like a bald cap or something and putting on one more every time so that like my head gets bigger. Anyway, it's not as funny today because it was like funny, 2 weeks ago I thought about it. I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, so this comment, someone in the last video, I asked sort of what kind of content you guys would like to see, right? I usually cover things that are Bionicle related, but occasionally I cover things that I have a general interest in, or that I feel like I have a valuable take on, right? Even if that doesn't necessarily mean anybody agrees with that, that's fine. But I like to be transparent. I like to be myself as fully as I can. And part of that is because I'm continuing to learn who I am as a person, right? And so, you know, I got a comment telling me, well, I'm not as interested in like the drama content, which fair enough. I don't like to put out content for the sake of drama or content farming or trend hopping or anything like that. Typically when I was doing videos like the Illuminati stuff, it was because of my tangential relationship to those types of topics, right? But it's not like I want the channel to focus around this stuff because it's not something I terribly enjoy. Commentary is a whole other thing, and I think I could do stuff like that in the future if I wanted to. But I need it to be something that I enjoy and that feels like I can dilute it and communicate it in a way that's easy to understand, if that makes sense, right? Anyway, so this person says that they didn't watch those types of videos, which fair enough, they're not for everybody. But that I seem like I'd be kind of the type of person to talk about things I'm interested in, which yeah, absolutely. They said music, which I don't know how much I'd have to add to music specifically because my main issue is I was never in a music class in school. Because we had to pay for our own, musical instruments, which I could not afford. Other reasons too, but that was a whole thing all on its own. I like making music, but I understand like nothing about it, so I couldn't tell you like, oh, this chord is this thing. Like I don't know. I just know it sounds good to me. That's all. But yeah, outside of that, talking about video games, and I might be surprising, I'm not like a huge gamer. Actually, I'm not a huge gamer by any means. I've played a lot more like classic game systems, of course, growing up in the 90s. I have a ton of memories about those too. My nephew, if you don't watch his channel, by the way, you should totally check it out if you're into video games, especially if you're into Smash Bros, if you're in the Smash community. He's in Japan right now, which is I'm super envious of. But yeah, he is like one of the top players, Smash players in the world, and so I'm just super happy for him. But if you want to check out his content, I'll link it in the description. It's Apollo Kage. You should absolutely check it out if that's something you're interested in. But not that I needed to plug him or anything like that, but it just came to mind. But yeah, and so I used to play a bunch of video games growing up with him, all kinds of stuff on like the N64 and even earlier Super Nintendo for a long time too. And so but the games that I play are usually single player games and usually kind of like open as best I can say. I like a lot of classic stuff too. I'm a huge Sonic game fan, specifically like classic Sonic, because again, that's what I grew up with, right? My neighbors had a Nintendo, we had a Sega, and so that was always my thing. Kirby was always fun as well. Mario, of course, fun. I also like Minecraft. I like pardon me, there's that throat coming in again. I like Breath of the Wild, games like that. I haven't played the new one yet. I want to, I just haven't gotten the chance to get my hands on it. I don't have a Nintendo Switch anyway, so it doesn't matter. But yeah. And then they also mentioned that I'd be interested in maybe talking about books. They're just gauging this from my vibes. And not actually, I don't read that much, only because it's not something that works with... I don't have the type of brain for sitting down and reading something and actually digesting it. My brain is always going. So I can't. I can read, but I just can't get through a book. They said, but I guess I get the vibes... the vibes I get from you are that while you enjoy a lot of things, you seem like you'd want to particularly cover things that directly invoke or inspire high creative freedom on the user's end. I'm going to say the viewer's end in this case. That's actually really accurate. I am someone who is passionate about a lot, though I couldn't just name them all off the top of my head. I like to think I'm a complex person. I'm quirky. No. Oh God. But, I do like to inspire people. I think that's like my main drive. Other than doing things for my own sake, I think I find more reward from something when I'm able to do something that somebody else can translate in their own way or learn from, right? So in that way, it's like I feel good being a teacher to somebody, being a tutor to somebody, but I'm also very bad, in my opinion, at communicating these skills to other people, which is why I don't do like tutorial content all that much. But that's all stuff you learn, right? These are all skills, and so I may not have been good at it in the past, but maybe in the future, So they said that they specifically think that I wouldn't want to talk about like music or how what you can interpret from it, but more about like musical software, or not about video games or reviewing or interpreting them, but about like game mods, how to make them, etc. Which I could definitely see how you'd get that. I'm a bit of a pedantic person, so I do like to talk about details and stuff a lot. But for the most part, I have a hard enough time learning new things. Like I'm pretty good at picking things up quickly once things click. I don't know how else to explain that, but I don't know how to express that to other people or get other people to click with it with whatever I'm trying to teach them, you know. So I don't necessarily see myself like communicating video game mods just because I don't know if I would ever be in that position. I want to make a game in the future. I think we all have that dream at some point, right? But I don't even know the full like story of it yet. I figure it's going to involve like my Rahi and stuff like that, but I don't even know also if I spent the time creating this thing, how if people would want it. You know what I'm saying? As crazy as it is, as much as I love making Rahi, as much as I love like the parrot back there, I actually don't get as many of my views on YouTube, for example, from my Rahi, as many of my likes on Instagram from my Rahi, but I get them from other things. So even though my Discord for the most part is focused around the Rahi and stuff, obviously also about these videos, you know, I get people liking them, but maybe 10 likes at the most on a Rahi post. Whereas when I post something about a video or what have you, you know, a lot more people engage with that stuff because we all have different passions, right? I like Bionicle. I like Rahi as a part of Bionicle, but not everybody does. And that's fair. So yeah, making a game centered around Rahi. I think I could do it if I went for more of a nostalgia bait kind of thing, where if it was like a play on like the Monadui online game, for example, right? But outside of that, I don't know how well it would go over. Maybe a Pokemon rip or something like that could work reasonably well, but other than that, I don't know. And then they said, as a wild card read based off vibes and stuff, that I have a high awareness of political and socioeconomic topics. Like you follow XR and Just Stop Oil and Electrical Reform Society and a bunch of other activist things. So actually, not exactly. I do have very specific political leanings. I've made a video about this in the past, but to briefly talk about them, I would consider myself less leftist. I would consider myself progressive. I don't know if that matters too much for the sake of this video, and I can talk about it in the future. But I also know sort of where I am mentally and at what stage I'm at evolving through that, right? I have a lot of pessimistic thoughts about government and things like that, which we all do, of course. But I also understand that I think it's just a topic for another video. Suffice to say, I don't know what XR and Just Stop Oil and Electrical Reform Society are, mostly because there are certain things I try to avoid, if only because it can be very easy to become depressed because of politics, and that can just sap all of your energy from you, right? So it's really hard to balance being political as a person and your responsibilities as a political person with your own happiness, right? Because depending on what type of politics you believe, there are, to me at least, inherently selfish politics and inherently selfless politics, right? And neither is necessarily a good thing, if that makes sense. So yeah, again, different video for sure. And then they've said they're just making a hypothetical. You've been recommended a video about aquaculture and the environmental reformation benefits of algae, and that harmful algae blooms are an incredibly imminent threat. And now I've got my screen like tilted at a really weird angle. It's very annoying. And now you've got a PDF about unpronounceable chemicals in Lake Tahoe rising from. So yeah, they're being very specific. I can definitely hyper focus on things. I don't think it'd be stuff like this though. Just because again, my brain will start to tune out. It's the same kind of thing with like reading book stuff, right? Where there are a few things I'll really delve into, again, when it comes to like plants and botany and stuff, like learning about phylogenies of different plants and stuff. Like that stuff interests me. I love that kind of stuff. But there are other things like this talking about what they're talking about here. And yeah, no, I don't know. I don't think that's the type of person I'd be in this specific scenario, but I understand kind of what you're picking up on. And yeah, absolutely. It's rare for me to hyper fixate on something, but when I do, I can get involved into it pretty heavily. And yeah, that's a pretty good idea. Actually, this is something I would actually consider up until recently a fault of mine. So for a long time, I used to have this idea of like doing projects, right? So I'd like squirrel away a good deal. If I went to a thrift store or what is it called? I can't think of it, but essentially a store where you can go and buy like repurposed old flooring and paint and hardware stuff, right? I used to go to those places a lot, and I'd pick up things for like projects, and that wasn't going to happen because again, that hyperfixation, you get onto one thing and then you get onto something else. And so for a long time I would do that stuff, kind of squirrel these things away, and now I've just gotten to the point where it's like I don't care if I don't need it, if I don't have a plan for it right this minute, I don't care about it because I can't, right? If I do it, it takes up space, it takes up time. I look at it and it becomes something to stress about, and it's not worth it. So it's not to say I don't still have stuff that I'm not going to use, because surely I do, right? We can't predict our uses for everything, but I don't go and like buy things or squirrel away things. Like I'll just set it out at the curb and right free and someone can have it. If I know that something's been sitting in the house for 6 months or something, it's not going anywhere, I don't have a direct plan for it, or I don't remember what I got it for, it's gone, right? Because I don't need it. So yeah, if maybe that tells you a little bit more about myself. But long story short, this video went in a different direction than I planned, but that seems pretty typical for me. But yeah, so there are definitely, I'm thinking, first of all, I want to do a video here in the next handful of days where I do a build for you guys of the bootleg set, the confrontation set that I got last week, I like to believe. I think it was like day before Christmas or maybe day after, I don't remember. I think it was day before. I think it was like last Saturday. So I want to do that one as a build on camera, on if it's a stream, whatever the case, right? And then on top of that, I'd like to do maybe a stream where maybe I just play through like classic Sonic or something like that, and we just chat and have fun, right? Because why not? But I'd like to talk about that series as a whole in itself too. I will say there are a lot of people on online that like Sonic, the old classic fandom. I think it can. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go ahead and end this one. So that's pretty much it for the video, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. It's definitely a different one from what I usually do, but maybe not too different. I don't know. And of course, with all of that being said, make sure you are subscribed. It really does help out the channel and helps to continue to grow. Along with that, you can also check out the Discord if you want to join the conversation, or the comments below. Discord, Instagram, and Patreon if you want to support the channel, gets perks in the description. And I'll see you all in the next one. Take care. Hopefully my throat feels better.